please.
Thanks. First of all, Minister, thank you for coming. I know you have a very busy portfolio, and I know this isn't in your brief, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to come and answer this commencement debate. And before I start into the merits of it, I just want to give you the context of it. So I'm a big advocate of electric vehicles, big advocate of the charging infrastructure, and I was amazed a couple of weeks ago when I came across what I found to be a really strange anomaly, and that is that in Ireland today you can only avail of an electric vehicle charging point, a home charging point, if you have a private driveway. And that's simple enough, because you have a private driveway, you can take your car in and you plug it in. Rules out thousands of people in this country. Rules out people who live in apartment blocks. Rules out people who live on terraced streets. Rules out anybody who physically does not have a private driveway. Now, I know we're at the beginning of this type of technology, but we have seriously ambitious targets of wanting to hit 1 million electric vehicles on our roads by 2030. So, like, that's just 8 years away within, 20 days' time or whatever it is. So, what I'm really hoping to try and get from government today is a solution to the problem. What are we planning to do to try and ensure that people who are in apartment blocks or in terrace houses who don't have access to private driveways can have access to charging points? So some of the new regulations, Minister, that you'll be aware has happened is that there's now new regulations with apartment buildings when apartment blocks are being built that they have to have a certain amount of electric vehicle charging points. And that's fair enough, and that goes maybe to some way of trying to solve the problem in private housing estates. Another thing that can happen, but it can be very, very difficult because management companies don't want to do it, is a management company could come along and decide to put in a charging point or a couple of charging points. But we want to get to a stage where everyone in this country has an electric vehicle. So it's not going to be feasible for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of charging points to be put into estates. We need something where every single homeowner can have something, and if it's a case that it cannot be physically attached from their home into the car, we need to be coming up with new ways of technology that we can get around this. The same issue goes along for, so when I talk about new technology, some things I think we could really look into is what they're doing in Germany at the moment, which is really interesting, which is they've trialled out phases now where an electric vehicle can actually connect into an electricity light on a street and can actually charge from that light there. So if you're living on a terraced house anywhere in Dundalk or anywhere in the country, and you're not going to be able to physically block a public pathway or a footpath by connecting it from your house, how else are you going to do it? If you could plug it into an electricity or an ESB pole and take some of the electricity from that for a point of time, it's a new technology in Germany, but I think that is something that could resolve it. The future is really bright for electric vehicles. I have absolutely no doubt that we're going to see a huge reduction in the cost of electric vehicles in the next couple of years. I have absolutely no doubt that we're going to see an increase in the range of electric vehicles and how much further they can go. And when the ranges in electric vehicles will increase, it's actually going to lessen the need for chargers at the same time. But the reason that I'm bringing this debate forward to the Senate today is because we are excluding thousands and thousands of people in this country from the use of an electric vehicle and having a home charging point by their lack of not having a private driveway. And I'm really hoping that the government can offer some solutions about what its plans are and how we hope to resolve this anomaly at some stage in the future.
Thank you very much indeed, Senator McGahon. Minister, to respond, please.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach, and thank you for the warm welcome as always. Thank you, Senator, for your commencement matter, and I have to say I think you really outlined it very, very well, the fact that it rules out thousands of people at the moment and thousands of homeowners in relation to because they don't have a driveway. At the outset, can I apologise for Minister Ryan and Minister Naughton, who are both in Cabinet at the moment. The government's policy regarding the increased use of electric vehicles is primarily driven by the Climate Action Plan 2021, which sets a target of 945,000 EVs by 2030. The government is fully committed to supporting a significant expansion and modernisation of the electric vehicles charging network over the coming years. A national charging infrastructure strategy is due for publication early next year and will set out the pathway to stay ahead of demand over the critical period out to 2030. Having an effective and reliable recharging network is essential to enabling drivers to choose electric. It can't be a deterrent to the driver if you don't have access to a charging point. You're certainly not going to look at electric when you're choosing a car. Charging at home is the most convenient and cheapest way to recharge. Targeting the installation of smart home chargers is a priority as we look to move toward more energy efficient and sustainable ways to charge. The Eevee Home Charger Grant Scheme is available from the SEAI and has been in operation since January 2018. To support the installation of home chargers for purchases of new and second-hand BEVs and PHEVs. The grant provides generous support towards the full cost of installation of a home charger up to a maximum of €600. However, as you have said quite clearly, there are houses and dwellings in Ireland where home charging is not an option due to the lack of a driveway or a garden. As such, there is also a need for a seamless public charging network that will provide for situations or instances where home charging is not possible, including on-street and residential charging, destination charging and workplace charging. In terms of existing supports for public charging, the Public Charge Point Scheme has been in place since September 2019 and continues to be available during 2021 to provide local authorities with a grant of up to €5,000 to support the development of on-street public chargers. And I note with interest the point you made about Germany, how they have started to connect to the electricity pole or light on the street, and to me it seems like a perfectly reasonable aspiration. The primary focus of the scheme is to provide support for the installation of infrastructure which will facilitate owners of electric vehicles who do not have access to a private parking space, but who instead rely on parking their vehicles in public places near their homes to charge their EVs. The Department of Transport is currently reviewing the scheme in order to ensure that this is as effective as possible in driving forward the national decarbonisation effort, and is working closely with a number of key stakeholders, including local government, to ensure that the changing infrastructure stays ahead of demand. This includes developing appropriate guidance for local authorities in line with the programme for government, which will ensure that we can continue to expand our national charging network through supports for on-street chargers. The Department is aware that a report was published by the County and City Management Association containing guidance to local authorities on the provision of charging infrastructure. The document is available for viewing online. Meanwhile, work has been progressed to expand the Eevee Home Charger Grant in such a way as to include shared parking in apartment blocks and similar developments. The Department is working closely with the SEAI and expects a scheme for apartments to open in the near future.
For that, Minister, it's a very comprehensive reply. I guess the couple of things to just focus on, that the primary focus of the scheme is to provide support for the installation of infrastructure to, essentially to paraphrase it, what we want to try and do is provide a more increased public charging network so that those who don't have access to a private driveway may not need that. That's in a sense what we're looking at. The other thing that's really important is the Department is working closely with the SAI and expects a scheme for apartments to open in the near future. So that goes a long way to trying to resolve the very issue that I'm bringing up, and I really would like to welcome. I'm very glad to hear that that's what's coming from government today. However, what I would say is, and just to summarise it, you said it yourself, Minister, we have to make sure that we minimise the deterrence. And for someone to say, OK, I'm going to go out and buy an electric vehicle, it has to be as simple as possible. And the deterrents are, is if I go to buy an electric vehicle and I see my nearest charging point is halfway up the middle of the town, or if it's down, there's 2 spaces in 2 estates over, and sure they're always constantly being used, I'm not going to make the jump into electric vehicles. And I think we, aside from the public, increasing the public infrastructure of charging vehicles, I think it would be really useful if we look at some of the best practice on the continent, see what they're doing there with examples of Germany, and I think we just need to think a little bit outside the box in terms of being able to provide it that's not necessarily public infrastructure. So, for example, I'm just gone over time, but you get the point I'm making, Minister, and would appreciate your response.
Thank you very much, Senator McGahon. Minister, for final response.
The Eevee Policy Pathway Working Group, consisting of 7 government departments and the Sustainable Authority of Ireland, considered a mix of policies to enable Ireland to meet the Climate Action Plan target, which will require a significant ramping up of EV sales. At the end of October, there was 46,600 EVs registered for taxation. €10 million was committed from the Climate Action Fund to support ESB investment in the charging network, and this has leveraged a further €10 million investment from ESB, with the infrastructure to be in place by the end of 2022. This intervention alone will result in 90 additional high-power chargers, each capable of charging 2 vehicles, 52 52 additional fast chargers which may replace existing standard chargers, and 264 replacement standard chargers with more modern technology and with each consisting of 2 charge points. But I do take your point completely in relation to those living in apartments, those living on the street that don't have a driveway, and I look forward to the report that we will see in the new year, because if we want to meet our targets, it can't be a deterrent, it has to be an advantage to you to have the EV. So thank you very much, Senator.